Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to NOLA Theater Talk. My name is Alan Smason, and again, you can watch our shows every Monday that we're on the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group on the theatercriticism.com Facebook page, not the theatercriticism.com website, support for that, and also on my own YouTube channel. And you can just Google if you want to check it out. You can figure that out as well. Again, we remind everybody if they would like to leave comments, please go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and allow Facebook to interface with our application, which is StreamYard. And StreamYard allows Facebook then to know who you are and know basically by allowing us to have your name displayed on the broadcast tonight. You show up as just a Facebook user, which is nice too. We'd love to have knowledge as to who is making comments, and we'll put those comments up as they come through. Tonight, we're very pleased and very honored to have a special first a local actor who, of course, is a noted film and TV actor. You have seen him in many works and far too numerous for me to go over, but who's going to be tackling a role which is a very special role for him, and that, of course, is August Wilson's How I Learned What I Learned. Please welcome Lance Nichols to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, Alan. I'm very excited to be here.
And again, Lance, you're going to be tackling the role of August Wilson of How I Learned What I Learned. But now that was actually first done by August Wilson himself was it 2003?
I think it was 2000. I think it was 2000.
And again, essentially, it's an autobiographical piece. Now, he crafted it with another artist, as I understand it, and we'll talk about that. Our other guest, who's on tonight, is an authority on August Wilson. Not only was a long-time critic at the Pittsburgh Post Gazette and got to know August early on in his career, but actually was the who coined the term Pittsburgh psychology when dealing with the works of August Wilson. And of course, I'm talking about Christopher Rawson. Chris, welcome to the show. We appreciate your being with us as well. And again, we say,
how you doing,
Chris? Chris, a member of the American Theater Critics Association, as am I. And so we've known each other for several years now. But when it comes to August Wilson, there are very few people who have had the experience of having known him as not just a fine artist, but as a personal friend. And that's why I really wanted Chris to come on tonight to maybe give you, Lance, a little bit of insight that you might glean a little bit from what you would call the of August Wilson. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you, you've seen this particular play a number of times. Can you how many?
Well, I'll be happy to talk about that, but I don't expect to say anything that's going to be of benefit to Lance Nichols. Lance is an artist. Lance has done the play already. He's gotten inside of it. The last thing, Lance, you want to ever do is listen to critics, because what the hell do critics know, right? I mean, I think the job.
Can I write that down, Chris? What you just said?
With quotation marks.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Yes.
Exclamation points. No, what the critic's audience is the audience. My job is to see the play and have a rich, full experience of it and try to describe that to the audience. I don't have the chutzpah to think that we're really talking to the artists, although I know the artists sometimes want to listen in to what critics have to say to the audience and so on. So that's my disclaimer, Alan, right off. But I will say a couple of things about my connection with August Wilson, which I always do at the beginning. I give talks all the time. Here I am in Pittsburgh, which is where August spent the first 33 years of his life. It's where the material for all of his plays came from. Although he moved around and lived in a couple of cities after that, he kept coming back to Pittsburgh, where his family was. It nurtured him. It also irritated him. It was a city where it was very hard to live as a Black man in August's time, et cetera, et cetera. But I had the good fortune to happen to have just become the theater critic at the Maine Pittsburgh newspaper in 1983. And August's first play on Broadway was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom in 1984. So my editor said, well, you're going to go to New York and review this, aren't you? And I said, yeah. So off I went. And that was, of course, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And I always start with this little quick anecdote when I'm talking to an audience and giving a talk, because the audience in Pittsburgh is often heavily Black. And here I am, an elderly white guy. How do I have the right to talk about August Wilson? So I sort of want to explain how I happen to be in this position. So Ma Rainey, that end of the first act is just dynamite, because it's Levy's talk about how these white guys come in and raped his mother when his father was away, and how he pulled out a knife, a young kid of, I don't know, I can't remember, 9, 10, to try to protect her. And they took the knife and they sliced him open, and then they left. And she had to try to find a doctor, but of course the white doctor wouldn't deal with him because he was a Black kid. And the vet wouldn't even deal with him because he was waiting for the rich man's horse to give birth. So he took him to the woman who, oh, good Lord, I'm getting old. What's the woman who deals with women giving birth? And
Midwife.
Midwife. Thank you. She took him to the midwife, who sewed him up. Anyway, it's this incredible speech. So I staggered out to the sidewalk at that intermission and blown away by the play. And someone said to me, well, you're from Pittsburgh, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And they said, do you know August Wilson? And I said, well, no, I've never met him. And they said, well, there he is right there. You can meet him now. And there he was, puffing a cigarette, which August was always doing, 2, 3, 4 packs a day. He said he could always quit smoking because he did it many times, which means, of course, that he took it up again. So I went over and I said, Mr. Wilson, I'm Chris Rawson. Hello. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I should tell you I'm here as a critic for the newspaper reviewing the play. And he went, oh, a critic. So I went, oh, a playwright. And we started to talk. And I have to say, what we did was what two guys from Pittsburgh always do when they meet in another city. We started talking about the Steelers. We're not really there to talk drama. We're talking about religion, which is professional football. But my point is that I got to know him when his first play hit Broadway. And he became the biggest story of my life, of course. I interviewed him a couple of times a year, or reviewed every play in New York and Pittsburgh and sometimes other places, and so on and so on. And in the course of it, I can honestly say we became pretty good friends. And so I think I wrote more about August journalistically than anyone else in the 21 years of his career. There are people like Sandra Shannon, who's an academic writer about him, who wrote several books. So there are people who've written more about him, but I followed him in the journalistic way. So, and whenever we talked, he was always talking about whatever he was writing next, or telling the story of what he wanted to write after that. He was always full. I mean, in the middle of his career, of course, he had at least 3 plays going on, because there was the play that had just left Broadway and they were deciding where it was going to go next. There was the play that was coming into Broadway, and then there was the play he was writing next. And so he had a lot to talk about. And he was a great storyteller, and he loved to talk about them. And over those years of meeting him many times in coffee shops mainly, he told a lot of stories. And the time came in his own life, right in the beginning of this new century, when he and his colleague, Todd Kreidler, who was really his, they called him his dramaturg. He was the closest person to August in the last 6-7 years of August's life. He just became sort of an intimate part. I think of him as a surrogate son of August's. And the two of them talking, one of them said, I don't think Todd knows who it was first or August knew, said, you should really put these stories together into a personal story, because they're all about your life and they really add up to a kind of a drama. And what they found in 2002, 2003 was it was a way for them to get away from the pressure of what they were mainly working on. And what they were mainly working on at that point, they just opened King Hedley II in New York, and they were working on Gem of the Ocean. And dealing with other things because there would be revivals of plays coming up. So there were always many things to work on. And I think Todd is the one who told me they did a lot of work on it on airplanes, flying from Seattle to New York, a good long airplane trip. And they just tell. And August had all these stories, many of which he'd told many times. So that it was a question of orchestrating them and putting together what you now do, Lance, this personal story of a journey through his writing life, which I love. I call it his 11th play. And when I teach August Wilson, I'm also a professor, newly retired, but a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And partly at August's urging, I started teaching a course in his plays just when he finished the 10th play. And so I've done that 15, 16 times, a course, which would be a full course in August Wilson, where we'd read all the plays and do background work and go out and find the streets in the play, things you can do in Pittsburgh, because here we are. And what I developed was the idea, we don't read the plays in the order of the century, because I think that's kind of an artificial read, though. I mean, some people do a course at August Wilson. They start with Gem of the Ocean, and then Joe Turner's Come and Gone, and Ma Rainey, and so on. They like to do them in that chronological order. We tend to do them in the order in which he wrote them.
Yes.
But what I like to do is start the the course, with how I learned what I learned, because that's August in his 50s, looking back at what it was like when he was in his 20s. And it just started out at 20, actually age 20, and he just started out on the Hilderstick. So it's kind of like a prelude to the plays. But then at the end of the course, we read it again, because it's like a coda to the plays. And when they read it the second time, having read the other 10 plays in between, it's so much richer. It works both ways. I'm sure that's true for the audiences you deal with. Some people, it's the first time they've met August Wilson, and some people have seen some of the plays, and some people are August Wilson addicts, as everybody ought to be, and they've seen all the plays. And so it means different things to different people. So that's my speech. And we can go wherever we want from there.
Two things. I want to sort of piggyback on August's relationship with Todd, because I remember Jay King Carroll, my director, telling me that she remembers Todd telling her that sometimes August would call like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah,
and wake Todd up and say, "Hey, look, grab a piece of paper. And then I got some ideas," and they would just start writing. Todd would get up and he would start, August would start writing, and they'd write to like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's fascinating to hear what you just said.
Yeah, Todd would get up in the morning. Sometimes he was going to meet August at 8 o'clock for coffee or something, but if he got up at 7, he'd find pages under his door. And he had to give him a read so they could talk about him. I mean, I'm sure people are kind of shocked by this when they find that this young, because Todd was very young then, white. I always introduce Todd as the only person in the world I know who was whiter than me. And how he and August became so close together. And Todd tells wonderful stories about that. I'm not going to retell Todd's stories, but I have a Zoom interview with Todd. Actually, I also have a Zoom interview with Ruben and with Eugene Lee, and on these we all of those. We talked a lot about how I learned what I learned, because it's such a key text, even though it's not part of the Pittsburgh cycle. You know, it sort of sits outside, surrounding the Pittsburgh cycle.
Chris, I apologize for a little bit of bad internet that we're having a little bit of problem with. Hopefully, it hasn't interfered with you and your talk. But I did want a question: was this written first as a book and then transformed into a play?
No, he wrote it. He wrote it to perform it.
Okay.
He was intending to perform it. Anytime you spent time with August, you discovered what a performer he was, and more and more he loved to join in on readings of his plays and so on. So the original plan was, they had a deal with the Seattle Repertory Theater right from the beginning that he was going to do a couple of weeks of performance of the play in 2003, and that's what he did. And there are various tricks they used. August was a wonderful performer. That doesn't mean he was used to memorizing a lot of lines right off, but you could put a list in front of him of just the title of each of the anecdotes in the play, and then he could tell them. You know, he knew the anecdotes. He could work it out. So they developed the play sort of in performance in Seattle. So that's the first performance. But then August had two other times when he did it, part of it. They would take piece of the script and do it at a Comic-Con conference somewhere, and something else at another theater. And the whole plan was, in 2006, he was going to perform it off Broadway in New York, because the Signature Theater was going to do a season of August Wilson. They were going to do an older play, a new play he'd written, and August Wilson performing his own autobiography, How I Learned. But as you know, he died October 2nd, 2005. And Todd, who was devastated by this, wouldn't touch the play until 2013, finally, when he and Rubin decided to do it off Broadway, with Todd directing and Rubin performing.
So it was actually 8 years after August's death when it was done again.
Right. Rubin says that he got in touch with Todd and he said, Todd, either you're going to do this with me or I'm going to find somebody else if Constanza will give me the rights, because everyone understood that Todd had a powerful right to direct it, since he had in effect co-written it, co-shaped it. The credit they give him is co-conceived by, and that's the credit that Todd and Constanza agreed on after August had died. So he directed Rubin Santiago Hudson in it, and Rubin was the one that August had said in his last year, Rubin, when I'm gone, you have to do that play. You have to do How I Learned. And Rubin did it that once for a nice run in New York. And then it was Eugene Lee, a very close friend of August, who'd been in lots of the plays. And Todd directed Eugene doing it in 5 different cities. I've got a list here. Did it in Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Boston, Washington, the Roundhouse Theater, and I think there was another city. And Rubin has not done it the last couple of years, and other people have gotten the rights.
Well, I can tell you it's not been done in New Orleans, and Lance is going to be the first person to do it.
Sure.
Now you mentioned earlier, Lance has actually done the play because it's a joint production with Portland Stage out of Portland, Maine. And so you actually, in March, after Mardi Gras was over, you were, I think, already up there rehearsing your lines for the shows.
I was actually up there during Mardi Gras in 20-degree weather, watching on my phone video of you guys back here in 80-degree weather, throwing beads and coconuts, and I'm like, ain't this something? I'm up here with all this snow. But seriously, it was the most, and I will say this because I told this to someone today. I've done 2 of August's plays. I did piano lesson at La Petite in 2020, right when COVID hit. And then around 2010, I did a production of King Hedley II at the Swine Palace in Baton Rouge. This is by far the most challenging but artistically satisfying live performance I've ever done, hands down. And that includes a 40+ year career as an actor.
What can I ask you why? What drove you to want to do it?
Prior to doing this show, Chris, August always seemed like this mythical playwright. I mean, I was familiar with his work, but not the man himself. Having done this show and having to do the research and having to work with a wonderful director, Jade King Carroll, who I think has done 8 of 10 August Wilson's plays and was a dramaturg for a lot of his things, I learned so much about the man, August Wilson, the man, that I didn't know. And it has given me a deeper appreciation of his work as a playwright, a better understanding of his characters and all of his plays. And to me, what it has done, it has humanized him. And that's what I'm hoping, that when people come to see this show, they will walk away and go, wow, I have a different perspective on how I saw August Wilson, or I have a deeper appreciation of his work. That's what I'm hoping.
That's great. It's interesting, by the way, right from the beginning, it's sort of odd. In the original script or something, they make it clear the actor is not playing August Wilson. The actor is playing an actor who is telling these August Wilson stories. It seems to me so strange that they do that, because of course you're playing August Wilson. On the other hand, I think August and Todd, they wanted to set any actor free from thinking you have to imitate August Wilson. So what is the approach you took to that? How much like August Wilson?
It's funny you should ask that question, because I had a reporter at the Portland Press Herald, the local newspaper there, asked me, so are you gonna imitate August Wilson? And I said, no, because that would be a disservice to him, and that would be a disservice to me. The words are there. All I have to do is speak the words as truthfully as I possibly can. The words will carry the story. And that's what I chose to do. And it's so funny, because I remember reading an article where when Denzel did Fences, initially he got hung up because he had August Wilson's voice in his head, and he was trying to do that. And then finally he just said, you know what? I don't have to do that. The words will speak for themselves. And they do. The words speak for themselves. So I just have to be truthful with what I'm doing and speak the man's words. And that's the beauty of it, Chris. When I'm up there, it's just such a freeing thing, because the man wrote such beautiful words and such poetry and stuff that, man, I'm just excited every night I go up there. I'm excited. It has completely taken me out of my comfort zone as an actor, and it has elevated my art as an actor. And I am so thrilled and humbled to be able to do it, to have done it, and to be able to show it to the New Orleans audiences.
Well, I love the way you talk about it, because what you say about the words is so close to what August said many times.
Well, let me share a story with you, because as I think I told you, Anita Stewart went to school with Constanza Romero at Yale. And Anita told me many times in rehearsals, and especially once we got on the stage, she said, Lance, she said, she says, I can't think of a different word. She said, but it's eerie. Number one, the physical resemblance you have to him on stage, and the essence of the man that you have, you have his essence. And I can't explain that, Chris. I really can't. I'm just up there telling the man's story, man. So I don't know if I'm channeling August.
Wait a minute. Go back, Alan. Go back to that. Is that you, Lance?
That's me.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm not like, I'm just up there telling the man's story, man. And every night when I stepped on stage in Portland, I literally felt like I was having a out-of-body experience.
How long did you perform in Portland?
We did 24 shows over 3 weeks, 8 shows a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm ready to get back, and I'm ready. The first couple of shows, of course, it was still kind of in my head, but by the time we got into the second week, I had a nice flow, and now I'm ready to get back.
That's very close to some things that Eugene told me about doing it, and Eugene had the advantage or disadvantage of having known August to some extent, because that might trap you in trying to be like him and not setting yourself free. But that's a wonderful story. I would think you would, of course, you'd want to keep doing it and let it. But how do you handle the huge shifts in it from moments of real anger to the poetry, the rhythm, the sweetness? I mean, because he goes through a whole lot of different moods.
He does, and some of those shifts are rather abrupt. Some of them are not just fluid shifts.
Yeah.
When I'm not performing, Chris, I teach, and one of the things that I tell all of my students is, and this may sound simplistic, but as an actor, all you have to do is tell the truth. Because if you tell the truth, then you don't have to act because you're there. And I don't know any other way to explain it. I wish you could come see what
I would love to. Why don't you swing through and do a version of it in Pittsburgh for us?
I would love to. You know what? In fact, I'm going to sit down and talk to Jade tomorrow when we have rehearsal. And I'm going to say, Jade, I really would like to talk about maybe taking this on a tour somewhere. I would love to do this show. I'd like for as many people to see this show, because I think this is one of August's plays that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Right.
That they don't know.
Right.
Even people who are August Wilson fans.
Well, Constanza's been slow to give out the rights to it. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now maybe things are loosening up, but it's something that, as far as I can tell, she feels kind of precious about. Doesn't want just anybody doing it.
She should.
Right. Yeah.
She should. Well, I know Anita videotaped, the Portland Stage videotaped the show, of course, for archival purposes. But Anita did tell me she was going to send Constanza like a 10-minute snippet of my work. And then I sent Constanza, I typed up a really, really nice letter that I sent to Anita, and I asked Anita to send it to Constanza on my behalf. So, but I want to do the show. And my thought is this show should be on Broadway. It should be on Broadway. And my thought, Chris, is why not me?
Well, good for you, Lance. That's what any actor of any skill ought to think.
So we'll see.
But
it's been an honor. It's been, and it came at such a great time, because in film and television, if you do something well, they want you to do the same thing or some variation of that same character over and over again. And this has just given me an opportunity to just sort of step away from that and just create my art. And I love it. I love it.
What are the two characters? I want to know who you played in Piano Lesson and King Hedley.
King Hedley, Elmore, the pimp.
You can't call him just a pimp.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's more than that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A man of the streets. I'm sorry about that.
He's a very suave guy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And then in Piano Lesson, the whining boy.
Oh, what fun!
Yes.
Oh. Well, I can see you doing those two characters as kind of a relationship.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was great. The only thing about when we did Piano Lesson, we opened 1 week in March. That was right. And we closed. And then COVID hit because COVID hit.
Oh,
yeah. So we only did.
It was a spectacular cast and a beautiful production, and I was looking forward to seeing it have a nice long run, and that people would have been flocking to Le Petit. And then all of a sudden, this pesky little pandemic started and everything in its tracks. So while we take a second, for me, Lance, and for Chris, so I can only have one thing to drink, and that's a vodka made out of potatoes. So this is a potato vodka, Chopin vodka, which is from Poland. And it's made out of potatoes because you can't have grains. I can't have Scotch or bourbon or rye whiskey or anything that's made out of grains unless it's coached for Passover. This, by the way, is coached for Passover. So while I'm in Passover mode, That's what I'm drinking, is a martini. And Lance, what did you bring into the room tonight?
I have a mixture of mango juice and grape juice, so I went non-alcoholic.
That's okay. I tell people that I do not insist that they bring in any kind of alcoholic drink, that it's just a way of sort of having a little icebreaker, seeing if you can bring something in that brings a little texture to the show and gives us something to talk about. We've been talking about August Wilson so much we haven't had a chance to interject yet. Chris, what did you bring in?
Coffee.
Good. Decaf or regular?
No, real coffee. Although in this case, with quite a bit of milk in it, because I do want to go to sleep at some point. Yeah.
So again, Chris, we appreciate.
I mean, August could sit for hours with a cup of coffee. In fact, he was blamed for that in the coffee shops in Pittsburgh before he'd become anybody. You know, he'd come in and buy a cup of coffee and make it go 3 hours, and they'd say, "You're not."
You mentioned that he liked to hang. Yeah, but
Pardon?
he did like to hang in coffee shops. It's kind of interesting.
Oh,
you know,
no, that's diners. Diners,
Yeah.
they were called then, and that's where he did his writing. That's where he preferred to do his writing.
Now, when he did his writing, did he do it longhand or did he do it?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
eventually he started using the computer. Do you know about the August Wilson archive?
I don't know.
Well, let me blow a trumpet here and say to the world, in 2020, the University of Pittsburgh, the head of the University of Pittsburgh libraries, which is a whole string of libraries, of course, because it's a big university, announced to the world that she had, for the University of Pittsburgh, procured the August Wilson archives. August never threw away a piece of paper in his life. And the archives were 450 boxes, good-sized boxes of manuscript and notes and CDs and scraps of this and scraps of that. I mean, a lot of it is little notes he wrote on napkins in diners.
I've seen it.
And yeah. And
Jade showed me a picture of like drawings too. He'd have like little stick drawings of little characters and stuff. It was fascinating. I'm like, oh my God, this man was so elementary in how he started.
But he could actually really draw, because there's a whole lot of self-portraits and pictures of other characters. It was an astonishing to me that the University of Pittsburgh got the archive. I'd been fighting for it, telling Constanza, August's widow, you really ought to. I mean, it was a question of selling it. It was a major piece of what he'd left Constanza and his two daughters. And it was worth a lot of money. And there were a lot of people who wanted it. Yale, presumably, and also we assume the University of Texas, which has the biggest collection of American authors anywhere. They have all the money in the world, it seemed like. And then there's various museums and other places. And the head of the library at Pitt just went after it. Took a couple of years of negotiating between her and Constanza. I had the pleasure, by the way, of introducing Cornelia Tencheva, who's head of the library at Pitt, to Constanza. I mean, it's a very small role that I played, but I did bring these two very strong, smart women together to start this negotiation that then went on for a couple of years. And now Pitt has hired a large staff, and they just had a formal opening in January of the archive, and it's available to the public. Now, there's a lot of it that isn't really cataloged yet, because a lot of it, there's sort of 200 boxes just of pads of paper filled with all kinds of material. There might be material from different plays all in that, or notes about plays, or notes about things he never wrote. So gradually it's going to be sorted out. It's a wonderful resource, Lance. The next time you're doing an August Wilson play, you come to Pittsburgh and you settle down in the archive at the University of Pittsburgh and start looking at things.
Absolutely.
And then let me give you a tour of August Wilson's Hill District.
Absolutely.
Show you where the different plays take place.
I'd love to see where the Oyster House was, the 88 Bar, all of those places that he talks about.
Some of the places aren't there anymore because the Hill. Well, we'll tell you that history another time.
Yeah.
But
So,
you actually are telling a lot. Excuse me. You're telling a lot of the history, doing how I learned what I learned,
Yes, I
because
am.
so much of that is the history of the Hill District that isn't there anymore.
yeah. And again, I would love to know, your process. How long did it take you? You said Mardi Gras. You was when you were already up there rehearsing in 20-degree weather. What was your process in approaching August Wilson? Obviously, Chris knew him and knew perhaps his speech pattern and what have you. But what were you trying to emulate the speech, or were you trying to just get his voice in your head? How was that working?
Well, having done two of his shows, I was very familiar with his rhythms, for lack of a better word, because there's definitely a certain rhythm to the way that August Wilson wrote. I was familiar with that, but I just started. Well, initially when the script was sent to me and I read it all in one setting, and it blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I've ever read. Then the second thing was, oh my God, this is a lot of dialogue. I'm being fully transparent here, guys.
Yeah.
And but I flew up on February 9th. I was picked up at the airport, dropped off at my apartment, brought to the theater, took a tour of the theater, and then sat down with J. King Carroll, the director, and the stage manager and the dramaturg, and we just did a read through. That was the first day. My second day, we had a designer read through for the design team, and then we started blocking the show. We started blocking the show on February 10th. We blocked 7 pages a day. And literally by February 23rd, we had blocked the whole show.
Wow.
And then we had another designer run through on the 25th for the whole design team. And then we started, I think we had our 2 tech days. We had 3 tech days. The first tech day was like the 27th. So literally I had 2.5 weeks of rehearsal.
Wow. Not enough.
2.5 weeks.
How is it? Yeah. Yeah. But
what were you going to ask me?
Well, I was going to ask you, how is the stage dressed? Is it a bare stage, or do you have any kind of
No, they
projections?
They came up with an incredible design. They built a platform. I can't remember exactly how big this platform was, but around the periphery of the platform in the front, and it was a raised platform. So around the periphery of this platform, they had different props from each of August's shows. And so you'd see like a bat, you'd see like a golf, you'd see like a radio. It was incredible the way that they designed this. And then the stage was raised in such a way that they had light coming up underneath. And on the stage itself was just a podium on stage right, a desk and a chair upstage left, a coat rack downstage left, and that was it. That was the only props on the show. And without giving too much away, because I know there's some people that are watching this or coming to see the show.
Yeah.
A lot of it was done with projection on a brick wall.
Right. That's what I was wondering if they were using. They're using, and it's not a rake stage, right? It's level.
Yes, it is level.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But it was incredible. That was my world. Now, occasionally I think there was 3 times I stepped off, but that was my world. That was August's world. That stage there with everything around, with all the props from different shows around them. It was, Chris, you got to come down and see this production, man.
Now, will we have the same set in New Orleans as was in Portland? Or are they building an entire new set?
From what I understand, they brought the same design team down, same lighting and sound people. Same. I got this. I'm wearing the same wardrobe, so that's really good because I got, I felt I could feel myself in that wardrobe and stuff now. So, it's just, I'm just excited. I don't know any other way to say it, guys. I haven't been this excited about doing anything in a long time. Long time.
Well, again, you did get quite a number of plaudits while you were up in Portland. And I know there's some people down here who know. Yeah.
as you describe it,
Yeah.
Lance, the design has elements very close to what they did off Broadway with Rubin.
Well, with Rubin?
Yeah, and the regional, I've only seen a couple of the regional theater productions. They're a little different. And the audience looking at them, of course, brings to the design what they know of August. So you understood that those are pieces of all the plays, but there's nowhere where August stands up there and says, now that's a play I wrote.
Right, from this. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's something the audience can draw on if they choose.
Now, you know, Chris, I'm not sure, but I think Jade may have been the dramaturg for Rubin in his production.
That's a really interesting question.
She may have been the dramaturg because she knew a lot about that production, a lot.
Mhm.
Right.
It just didn't seem like it was secondhand information.
And Jade is the director on this particular production. I think I did throw up the poster so that's Jade King Carroll, and
Correct.
Of course, and I love this poster because it's obviously August Wilson's face, but it's made up of phrases from his plays. You can't really see it, but when you get right up on top of it, you can really appreciate into this. Whoever designed this, I don't know who it was, but they're a genius. They're fantastic that they actually use a number of the phrases from the various August Wilson cycle of plays. The Pittsburgh termed them. And how long ago, by the way, Chris, was that you came up with that term?
Yeah, I started doing it at some point in the 90s. I refer to it as the Pittsburgh cycle. And I wanted a way to refer to the group of plays which was growing. And maybe it was the late, I don't think it was the late 80s. May have been.
But some 80s.
And at one point, I said to August, August, I don't know if you've noticed, I've been calling it the Pittsburgh cycle. And he said, well, you're the Pittsburgh critic, so I guess you might do that. And he didn't say I couldn't do it. So
right.
I thought that gave me permission. After he died, Constanza and the publishers decided to put out that box set of all 10 plays together, and they called it the American Century Cycle. Actually, they called it the Century Cycle, and then shortly thereafter, they changed it to the American Century Cycle. And Constanza and I had a nice long conversation about that. I said, I'm the one who started calling it the Pittsburgh Cycle. I'm kind of fond of that. And she said, but we are calling it the American Century Cycle. Maybe for my sake, you would go over. So usually when I'm writing now, I say August Wilson's American Century Cycle, parenthesis, sometimes referred to as the Pittsburgh Cycle. But if you Google Pittsburgh Cycle and American Century Cycle, you'll see they're coming up 50-50 across the world. Every time the New York Times or the London Times or someone uses Pittsburgh Cycle, I think, yeah.
But you don't get any residuals for that.
No, you don't get anything for what we do. I mean, heavens. I think I'm the first one who said August was one of the 5 great American playwrights. And I hear Denzel say it using the very words that I use. And I think, okay, so that's what a journalist does. He puts something out there and then it floats around,
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate you with us here tonight, Chris. You've given us a lot to consider.
No, I mean, it's exciting for me to be here with an artist who's dealing with the play. And Lance, I love the way you're talking about it. Of course, I want to see the show. And the world is short, or passes us by, and maybe it'll work out.
It will.
I don't know how many other people have done it.
I consider myself to be in an esteemed group of actors who've done this.
Or who would want to take it on. I mean, I took a look. It's 41 pages.
It is.
And there's a lot of stuff on every page. It's a lot for you to have, not just to memorize, which is, of course, the least of it in a way, but to find a way to bring alive, to make. Can I tell you my favorite moment in the show? This is really silly in a way.
Yes.
I want to ask you yours, which is maybe something you shouldn't ask an actor.
No, I can talk about my favorite moment without.
Okay, well, let me get by mine. This is just because this is a story that I heard August told several times. It's the story about trying to get the check cashed in the
Oh my God, at the bank. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
and him saying, and when you go to heaven, God
Yes,
will
I know
say,
what you're talking about. Yeah, I know.
you screwed your sister's boyfriend, you
Right.
killed your neighbor's cat, you did all these awful things. God forgives that. But when you wouldn't give an envelope to the man and the rest in the bank, that's going to send you to hell.
Yeah, that gets a laugh every
But
performance.
it's not just a laugh. It's so true.
Yeah, it is.
And it's the thing that he talked about more than anything is the respect, needing respect, and growing up in Pittsburgh's a very racist city for a northern city, and growing up surrounded by disrespect, by ignorance, and it just drove him. But let me pass that by. What's your favorite moment or moments?
My favorite passage is "Wrong place, wrong time." You can say the right thing to the wrong person. You can say the wrong thing. You can say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the right time, but you can't say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time.
Right.
That story there, and I won't get into it because that's probably one of the most powerful moments, emotionally powerful moments of that entire piece. But that's
it catches people by surprise.
It does, because I literally hear people go,
yeah, they don't know that's coming.
No, they don't.
Yeah. No, it is so much material of weight.
I also love, Chris, I also love the
again
Nancy Ireland story too. I love the Nancy Ireland story about the girl, the young girl he was enamored with. Yes.
Yeah. The girl he wrote the poem to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you happen to have a particular favorite play of the cycle, or do you just accept it all as one work that just should be examined as a series rather than one particular one, or is there one that you like better than any? I mean, are you a Ma Rainey's or a Fences or a Jitney or a King Hedley fan? Any of those?
He's asking you, Lance.
Oh, I thought he was asking you.
I was asking you.
No.
I'm asking you first, and then I'll maybe throw it over to Lance. I mean,
I get asked that question all the time because I'm known as someone who, knew August through his career and talked to him.
I'm just wondering if there's one that resonates more than.
Well, this is how I always answer that question. Yeah. Something like this. Well, my favorite of the plays. Now I have to do it if I do it right. My favorite of the plays is Joe Turner's Come and Gone, and that's not really a surprise because it was August's favorite play. On the other hand, I really love The Piano Lesson, and I also love Gem of the Ocean and Jitney and Two Trains Running. I go through about 7 plays before I slow down, and I say, and the other 3 are pretty wonderful also. So, I mean, they're all wonderful in different ways, but I think if I had to choose, I mean, I don't have to choose a favorite play.
You don't have to, but I was just wondering if there's one that particularly resonates with you more than the others.
Well, for me, along the way, it was Joe Turner. Now, the reason it was August's favorite play, I asked him this question many times, and his general answer was, and this is at different years in his life, his general answer was, my favorite play is Joe Turner, and he would supply whatever the play he was working on then. So those are his 2 favorite plays at that point. Right. The thing he said about Joe Turner was when he had written the account of Harold Loomis and it's a very short version of the transatlantic crossing compared to what he later did in Gem of the Ocean, but it's the first time he did it. He said when he wrote that story of the bodies then coming up and walking on land, he figured he never had to do anything else in his life because he'd written the most important thing that he would ever write. Now, he went back to it, of course, at length in Gem of the Ocean and took us to the City of Bones, and, fleshed it out. But it was so powerful. Also, Joe Turner, after Fences and Ma Rainey, which are both basically realistic plays, Joe Turner took us to a spiritual place, to a magic place, we discovered that that's what August could also do. I mean, he had discovered that he could also do that. He was learning about what a playwright could do as he was going along. So, Lance.
Yeah, it's your turn, Lance. Any particular play that you find an affinity with that more than the others?
Well, prior to this one that I'm doing, it probably was King Hitler II. And it's interesting because in comparison to some of August's other plays, that one is not done as much as, say, like Fences, and I've often wondered why that is, why that play has not been produced as much as some of these other plays. Chris, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a goddamn hard play to do. It's, and it's tough stuff, and it's a great big. So I reviewed the first performance of it ever, because it had its premiere in Pittsburgh. It was a joint production of Seattle Rep and the Pittsburgh Public Theater. And it had its first performance in Pittsburgh. It was 3.5 hours long.
Ooh.
And of course, before it got to Broadway, it was 2:45, 2 hours, 35 minutes plus an intermission, something like that. In my review, I said to our audience, we are so blessed to see this version of the play, because we are getting all this extraordinary writing. And we know by the time it gets to Broadway, it'll be half an hour, 45 minutes shorter. But we have seen the full flood of August Wilson. And there was so much wonderful stuff in it. But it's a damn hard play. It's this huge Greek tragedy. I mean, the title sort of refers to Shakespeare, but it's really a Greek tragedy of a play, a great, big, difficult play. And I don't think many people choose it as their favorite, but I do find people like you who do say that.
That was the first of his plays that I ever done. I came so close. I was living in Los Angeles at the time when they were doing it was either 7 guitars or a jitney, but Fishburne was cast in it, Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, he was in
was it 7 guitars or was it
no, I think Fishburne played Sterling in 2 Trains Running, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Who was directing a lot of August's plays at the time? I'm trying to think of this gentleman's name. African American director.
Well, you don't mean Lloyd Richards.
Lloyd Richards.
Well, yeah.
I was living in LA at the time, and they had me come down and audition for Larry's understudy.
Wow.
And I got cast, and I kept praying, Larry, please get a movie, please get a film so I can go one time. And Larry never, of course, Larry never got a damn movie, man. So I never went up. But I wanted to do that play so badly. I did.
Wow.
Yeah, of course.
But now, to answer your question, my favorite piece now would have to be How I Learned What I Learned, because to me, it's August Wilson on steroids.
Yeah.
For lack of a better analogy, it humanizes the man, and it humanized him for me. And when we did it in Portland, several people, because we had several talkbacks, and several people said, I've seen like Fences, and I've seen Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and some people had seen some of his other shows on Broadway. And he said, I liked his shows, but I never really kind of understood the man himself. And having seen this show, I have a better understanding of the man, and I have a deeper appreciation of the shows that I did see, or the movies that I did see. And so I'm hoping that's what people walk away with this, that I've been able to humanize August Wilson.
I understand Denzel Washington production company has announced that he's going to film the entire cycle of the plays. I'm not quite sure how long that process is going to be, but that he plans to release.
It's going to take forever.
Yeah,
no one's
I know.
going to live long enough.
Well, you know, it's
Maybe.
started. I mean, he did do Fences.
The next one, you
and
know,
he did
the
do
next
Ma
one
Rainey's
is
Black Flame. Yeah.
Piano
Piano
Lesson
Lesson?
is the next one. It's going to happen this year, and we hear that it's not going to be filmed in Pittsburgh because both Ma Rainey and Fences were filmed in Pittsburgh. It's a matter of some importance to us and our movie people, our actors, and so on. In any case, we hear it's going to be filmed elsewhere, but they're very tight about their information. I don't know who the director is. I mean, I'm sure people know, but I don't know. I don't know who wrote the screenplay. But Denzel has the contract with Denzel and Netflix have the contract with Constanza.
Yeah, and I thought they did a very good job with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. You know, into a movie and Fences as well. I mean, I have to say that the quality of the work was very good.
Well, they're very different treatments. Ruben Santiago Hudson wrote the screenplay for Ma Rainey, and the interesting thing about Fences is that August had written at least 2 and I think 3 different screenplays during his life of it, and he'd opened it up and taken it out to scenes in other parts of the city. He wanted Oprah to play Alberta, the woman that Troy has the affair with, and so on and so on. But when Denzel came to make the movie, he didn't use any of that. He went right back to the play text and just cut out some of it and stuck right to the play text. But for Ma Rainey, for Ma Rainey, they used Ruben's text, and Ruben is the one who came up with that opening in the tent meeting down south with Ma Rainey singing, and then taking him to Chicago.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to see what people are going to do with them.
Chris, you and I both know there's certain things you can do on stage and certain things that film will allow you to do that you can't do on a stage. So when a director has the right vision and they can take the original and transform it into something that is perhaps a little bit more artistic and allows the viewer to see different aspects of the original work, I think they should be complimented. Of course, when you try to change the intent of the artist who wrote the work and try to change it into something because you're the director and you decide, well, I'm the director, I can do whatever the heck I want. There's where the problem is. That's where the rubber meets the road and where we have difficulties. So, as long as you're faithful to August Wilson's intent, I don't have a problem with the director as long as it doesn't go too crazy and that if he allows you to see some perspectives that you might not be able to see on stage or be able to have it presented. So
Lance, do you know Denzel?
No, I don't. But our paths crossed years ago. This is a true story. So in the early 80s, this would have been like 81, 82. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I auditioned for a film called Carbon Copy. And it was a comedy Michael Schultz directed. And the story was about a young African-American man, never knew his father. His mother dies, and when he's kind of going through her things, he finds some pictures of his mother from her college days, and she's hugged up with this white guy. And he finds several pictures of his mom, and he comes to think, maybe this is my father. So he goes on this search. This is before internet. He finds out who his dad is. His dad turns out to be George Segal. I had 5 auditions for this role, and I didn't get it. And I'm like, I can't wait till that movie comes out. I want to see who got that role. Movie comes out about a year later, and I see this guy, and he's good. And I'm thinking, but ain't no way he could be from a mixed, not from the, no. I'm like, nah, that's bad casting. So then the next time I see the guy, he's on a series called Saint Elsewhere. And I'm like, that's a Carbon Copy. And then the next time I see him, he's in Glory, and I'm like, who the hell is this dude? And so for years, and if I ever meet Denzel, I'm gonna tell him this. For years, brother, I had a hard time watching your films because as good as you were, I was like, God damn it. At one point, we were like this, and then he went up. Now I realize that was his story to tell and not mine. But that's my Denzel story. Never met him, but when I do meet him, I'm going to tell him that story.
Well, I just figured if you knew him, you might be that much closer getting in one of the movies.
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on that.
That's all right.
Good.
I'm working on that.
I wish you luck. Chris, you stayed the whole time. We appreciate you being with us. I know that we did get one comment prior to before, and the questioning wasn't on me. It was all on you. I appreciate you doing that. And I know that Tommy Myrick was here as well. I should also mention, before we get off, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Anthony Community Theater has done the entire cycle of August Wilson Plays here in New Orleans. One of the awards that's given out for doing the cycle was given to Anthony B. Community Theater.
Well, yeah, I give them out.
Right, I know.
Yeah, my newspaper and the August Wilson House, August Childhood Home, we give an award to any theater that's done the complete cycle, by which we mean the 10 plays. We're not including
not the
How
11th,
I Learned
but
yet.
How I Learned it. Yeah, How I Learned
and there's 16 theaters nationally. That's
fantastic. So I want to give a shout out to Anthony Bean. He's had some lean years prior to our situation here in New Orleans, with the recovery from the pandemic and what have you. But we hope to see him back on the boards, and that his summer camp will be successful as it has been for the last several summers. He's been working with Nord and other individuals to bring theater to the kids, to the young ones, and hopefully he will be able to be back on stage and present the cycle of plays again, because he was going through the second cycle at this point in time. But we'll see if that can happen. I'm hoping and keep my fingers crossed it will. But again, over time. But I want to thank Chris for being with us. But again, this is How I Learned What I Learned. Again, this is going to be at Le Petit Theatre. So if you have not seen Lance, that's him. This August Wilson. Lance, August Wilson. I think very good. For those of you who are thinking about it, I've got the ticket information there where you can get it. But basically, if you don't, just go right to lepetittheatre.com and you can get tickets advanced right now. Opening night is, I believe, the 21st, which is a Friday night. I believe there is a preview night on the 20th that you might be able to go. They might be asking people from the industry to go that night as well. So we'll see what goes on. But being with us tonight, and again, it's been my pleasure to have I don't want to say statesman, let's just say the former critic of Pittsburgh Post Gazette, Chris Rawson, a member in long standing of the American Theater Critics Association, who was an actual colleague and I would say good friend of August Wilson, and readily will admit to it. And at Lance Nichols, who will be taking on the role of August Wilson in How I Learned What I Learned, will be on stage starting up in, I think it's about 11 days from now is when you actually open, Lance. So
correct.
So keep the fingers crossed, and wish that everything goes well, and that we get a chance to see you perform this wonderful work. Chris, thank you for being with us.
Hey, Lance,
take you all out.
Lance, on it's Thursday, April 27th. That's August's birthday.
Okay.
So you might.
We'll keep that in mind.
Yes. I'm going to put that in my phone right now.
Thursday, the 27th.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for
very good. Thank you for now, but don't go away. I'm going to say goodbye privately. Okay. And in the meantime, Lance, thank you very much for being with us. Le Petit Theatre, the place. Lance E. Nichols as August Wilson in How I Learned What I Learned. Thank you all for being with us. We went a couple of minutes over tonight. We appreciate your patience, and I apologize for any of the intermittent problems we have with the internet. Once again, my name is Alan Smason, and I am the host on this NOLA Theater Talk Show. We appreciate watching us every Monday that we're on the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group, on the theatercriticism.com Facebook page, and also on my YouTube channel. So if you missed the show or any part of it, it'll all be archived on those sites. Once again, you can see it on Facebook or on YouTube. And again, thank you all for being here. Go check out this beautiful play at Le Petit as part of a joint production stage. And as always, I wish you all a great holiday. For those of you celebrating Passover, last part of it, take care of yourselves. And I will see you at the